Are we ready?
I think so, Jason. Let's do this.
Okay. All right, so for the 2021 National Conference, our topic is the quest for a comfortable prosthesis, one man's journey in search of something better.
All right, I'm driving the ship here, so we'll try to move forward. There we go.
So the presenters for today is myself. I'm Jason Koger. I'm a bilateral arm amputee, and I'd like to introduce my prosthetist is Rob Dodson, and we are going to explain a few things about comfort and fittings. So for the agenda today, we're going to do an introduction. I'm going to share my story. Rob is going to share the prosthetist perspective, and then we're going to do a conclusion. But the reason we talked earlier about me and Rob before we got on this talk, and he said, you know, what is the reason for us doing this? And in my mind, and I think in his mind, is two different things. Mine is I get a lot of questions from other amputees of how am I successful? How do I wear prosthetics for so long? And I have my side of the story, and I feel like it's a very, very important, agenda and speech to tell people that there is a way to be comfortable. The other thing is that I've seen people in the past is they get fitted and it's not comfortable, and maybe they had some technology that was given to them through insurance, and maybe the insurance has found out that they do not wear their prosthetic. And what bothers me about that is I don't want my insurance to say, Jason, that is a luxury to have that, because it's not. Whenever you're fitted right and you're fitted comfortable, you can go 16, 18 hours a day and wear the prosthesis that you have and be fully functional. So my introduction. So thank you for letting me come here and just share what it is to be comfortable as an amputee. And I really appreciate having Rob on this talk with me, because he can share his side of being a prosthetist and what it means for him to give an amputee a comfortable fit.
All right, Jason. So I love this picture of you and your daughter. I was looking for what would be a good picture to show like comfort, like to me, it's a hard word, right? Because it's very subjective to each person. It's hard to quantify. And as a prosthetist, our goal is to design a prosthesis, whether it be a leg, an arm, a finger, that is truly comfortable for a patient to wear, that they actually want to use and want to get into on a regular basis. This piece of plastic or this piece of silicone or that surrounds your body, the last thing that we ever want to do is provide something to a person that's not quote unquote comfortable. And so what we had done a couple years ago is we did a little study, a little research that said, okay, how do we quantify the word comfort? Because it is such a subjective term. And so what we said was that, okay, there are specific things that a person can say is why something is comfortable and why something is not comfortable or uncomfortable. And at the end of the day, we think that a comfortable prosthesis leads to a happy patient. It leads to a more independent patient. It leads to less rejection. It's a big problem in upper limb is that there are a lot of people out there that just choose not to wear their prosthesis. It's a little bit different in lower limb because to get up and walk, you need your leg. But with an arm, if you have a sound hand, then maybe you just don't want to wear that other device for right now. We believe that team collaboration is a huge component. Working with the therapist, working with the doctors to make, if a patient needs a revision surgery, that kind of thing is to have that open collaboration. We feel like getting into a prosthesis quickly, and we'll talk about this later, is a huge component of a comfortable fit. We also want to look at data. We want to know through surveys and through different outcome measures why something is successful or not successful. And then we also know that it's a lifetime care for you, the individual, the patient. And so it's not just a week-long event or maybe in a couple-month event. It's going to be a lifelong event. So I
So what
think
is,
there's a, oh,
oh,
sorry,
go ahead.
Jason, go ahead.
Right. So what is comfort for an amputee? Obviously, I want to be pain-free. I want a good suspension. I don't want anything to fall off whenever I don't want it to come off. And I want to have the freedom of motion to get to my mouth or to do the things that I want to be able to do. So
We also,
comfort, sorry, comfort's also like an old pair of boots. You want to be confident with the device that you have. You don't want to walk around and think that you're going to drop something or drop a drink. The protection of your limb, your residual limb, and the ability to wear a prosthesis all day and being reliable at all of your controls. So here's my story. On March 1st of 2008, I was riding a four-wheeler around my family's farm, and I came in contact with a down power line. So I took 7,200 volts of electricity. I was immediately put into an ambulance and taken to Owensboro Hospital. My wife actually rode in the ambulance with me. And when I looked down to my left arm, I noticed that electricity had exited my left thumb. And I knew right off the bat that I was going to lose my thumb. A lot of times I don't share this part of my story, but my grandfather actually passed away 2 months before I got hurt. But my entire life, he was a single arm amputee. And I told my wife as we were going to the hospital, I said, you know, Papa could do everything. Like, he still worked on the farm. He still drove tractors. He could do everything. I know everything's going to be okay. I'm just going to lose my thumb. Got to Owensboro Hospital, immediately life flighted to Vanderbilt. And I went into the burn unit and went straight to surgery, not knowing what the outcome would be. I really didn't understand why I was even getting life flighted to Vanderbilt. So I was put into an induced coma for 3 days. And during that surgery, they got the permission from my wife in order to save my life. They had to amputate both of my arms. I am below my elbow. And so 3 days later, I wake up in a hospital room. And as I'm laying there, I was flat on a bed because I actually had a fracture in my back as well. And I remember my dad, me asking for my dad, and my dad came in the room, and I still had no idea that they had amputated anything. And I remember asking him, you know, how bad was it? And he said that they had to amputate both of my arms in order to save my life, which was devastating. But at the time of my accident, I was married. I was 29 years old, and I had 2 little girls at home. I have 3 children now, but at the time of my accident, I had 2 daughters. My oldest was 21 months old, and my youngest was 3 months old at the time. So I remember, you know, going in my room and the doctors coming in and out and explaining why they had to amputate. Jenny had already done research on devices and different things on prosthetics, and which was very helpful. She had 3 days to kind of do a little bit of research before I woke up. And but I still, laying in the hospital room, I feel like I was listening to people that had their hands, right? So, you know, it's really hard when somebody says you're going to feel like this, or it's going to be like this, and you really want to know, like, well, how do you know this? Like, you have both your hands, you have your hands, you have your legs. And at that moment, a couple of days later, I had a guy come into my room, and I'll never forget this guy. He walks in, he sits down with me, and he said, Jason, what happened to you? And so I explained to him, and he was a peer visitor, is what he was. And so anyway, after I told him my story of what happened to me, I remember asking him, because his whole body was burnt. You could tell that he had been in a fire, and he was missing some fingertips. And I remember saying, well, what happened to you? And he told me that he was a pilot for a private plane. Actually, it was the lawyer for Walmart. And he asked if he could borrow the plane and take his family on a vacation. So he took off in this private plane. He took his kids on a vacation, his wife. And at the time, he had 2 little girls. They did this awesome vacation for a week. They got back in the air, and he had to do an emergency landing. and the only place he could land was in a trailer park. And he went through a couple trailers, and he told me, he said, I was very lucky that nobody was home and at those trailers. And the last trailer that he hit, he ended up hitting the propane tank, and it exploded. So he got to the plane door, and when he was touching the plane door, his fingertips were just melting. And he finally got the door open. He started carrying his wife out, his kids out. And he told me, he said, I'll tell you that after I got them all out, I found out that I was the only survivor. That changed my whole attitude of, I don't know how this will work, but it will work. Immediately I had some, prosthetists that were local that started talking to me about how hands feel. And still to this day, I really wish my grandfather was around, because I have no idea who he went to. I don't know who his prosthetist was. I don't know how often he went. And just to be able to have those talks with him on comfort. I mean, obviously he was comfortable because he wore his prosthetic from the time he got up in the mornings. To be honest with you, in 29 years, I had never seen my grandfather with an arm off. So that would tell you how comfortable he was. So goals. At first, my goals were just simple ADLs. I wanted to be able to get home. I wanted to be able to do all the ADLs that you can do. I wanted to return to work. And most important, I wanted to resume a normal life. And my attitude was just that. I wanted a normal life. I didn't know the research about prosthetics and how comfortable they actually were to wear. And one thing that I wanted to be able to hold my kid's hand and just walk across the street. Something simple as that. Also, I love to hunt. I wanted to drive myself. I still wanted to work on the farms. So that was my first goals of what I wanted is my life back. I spent 2 years with what I thought was comfortable. I decided to travel to a specialist and try a different approach. And within 4 hours, I was put into a socket that I was truly unbelievably comfortable. I was converted to silicone sockets later on. I firmly believe, and that's what I wear today. They're the correct socket design for each individual. There's a superior material science and a comprehensive care model. The silicone has helped me a lot, especially on my right arm, because my right arm was 3rd-degree burns. And as soon as I started wearing the silicone, for one, it was cooler, it felt cooler to me. For two, it felt lighter. Even though it's not lighter, it feels lighter. And whenever I took it off for the first time, I could tell that my scar tissue was kind of depressed. It was flat and it looked a lot better. My initial experience. So when I was in the hospital in Vanderbilt, I had a prosthetist come and talk to me. And at first, my mind was every prosthetist is the same. Every company is the same. They all went to school. And the best way to refer to this is, a doctor's a doctor, right? That's exactly the way I felt. They all went to the same school. They all know the same stuff. So why do I want to travel so far away? Why do I want to, be gone all the time? And I got fitted initially, and, I went home, and for 2 years, I wanted to wear my prosthetics, and I did wear my prosthetics, but it hurt. Like, I wanted to take them off midday. I wanted to take them off just to kind of relax and feel free. I was constantly going back and forth. And I will also tell you that, the prosthetist that I was going to was a great person. I mean, he was a great person. He did everything that I thought I needed. I didn't know what I needed. I had no idea what it was like to wear prosthetics. So my general practitioner, he was busy all the time. Sometimes it was hard to get a hold of him. Again, the fitting, it hurt. And I wanted something different. I didn't want to be in pain for the rest of my life, because I knew that being 29 years old, I would end up wearing a prosthetic longer than I did having real hands. So then I got an opportunity, I actually did some research and found out about an upper limb prosthetic specialist. And I did a lot of research. Again, this took 2 years for me to do this. And I thought, why not try it? Like what's going to happen? The worst thing can happen is I can stay where I'm at. So I went forward. I live in Owensboro, Kentucky. And whenever I first did some research, this company was in Dallas, Texas. And I thought, man, that's a long way from Kentucky. And I was used to going to the prosthetist, every 2 or 3 days, once a week, once every couple of weeks. And that was one thing that I kept on thinking, I cannot do this. I cannot go to Dallas, Texas every week, every other week. It just won't work. So I did a lot of research. I talked to them a lot, and I found out several things. They do an expedited fitting in 4 days. Obviously, I found out how comfortable it was. I'll never forget the very first time I put on a test socket. And I got on the plane that afternoon and came home, and I literally wore my prosthetic for 16 hours the very first day. And I'll never forget, I don't know, Rob, if you remember this, but I got home and I couldn't get it off, because when you fly, I guess your arm gets a little bit bigger. And I got nervous, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go get it cut off. Like, what do I do? But obviously I have figured out a lot of stuff. I love wearing my prosthetics from the very time I get up out of bed. I put them on, and I do, just so that you all know, I wear myoelectrics, and I also wear body powered. So depending on what I'm going to do for the day is what I put on. I don't carry a lot of adaptive equipment. I don't like adaptive equipment. So if I know what I'm going to do for the day, I dress accordingly. So whichever arms that may be. And another thing that I truly enjoyed was working with specialized OT training. I did have an OT in Owensboro. She had never worked with an upper limb patient ever. She has only worked with stroke victims. And, she was a big push for me. I think she did an amazing job on making me move forward. But her and I really had to work together on how to train ourselves on using prosthetics. So when I first changed, that was a big deal. I mean, we learned how to cut food, and I got a week to work with specialized OTs. Success factors. So what is a success? For me, it was the speed of the fitting was a big deal. The long-term care, I feel like the relationship that Rob and I have is, I can call him at any time something is wrong or something tears up. You're going to tear stuff up. But I have that connection, and not only me, but every patient I feel like would have that with somebody like Rob. They focus on upper limb only. They have a very experienced team. And when I say a team, it's from the very beginning to the end, OTs, prosthetists. I mean, they have it all. And the focus time, the time they spend with you, it's not 4 or 5 rooms and he's running in each room. It was a very one-on-one relationship. And that was, all of that has made me a successful amputee. It's also allowed me to get my functional independence back. I am huge on doing things in my community. I started an event called Handing Back. My community, when I came home, literally poured all their love and support into me, and it truly pushed me to be who I am today. So I love giving back. I'm a president of the baseball field for my son. I help coach teams. I have the freedom to engage in whatever I want to do. If I want to go hunting, if I want to go out to eat, if I want to travel by myself, I can do all that stuff. I like to help other amputees. That's one thing that I absolutely love, is helping other amputees, because I don't want them to feel like they are alone. I literally felt like I was the second upper limb amputee in the entire world. My grandfather was the first and I was the second. Those were the only 2 people I'd ever seen in my life that had lost an arm. And I want to be that person that people can reach out to and find and talk to. It improved my confidence. There for a while, I was worried that my arm was going to fall off or I was going to drop a drink. And confidence is a huge deal, especially when you go out to eat. I remember the early stages of dropping stuff on me, and it's very embarrassing. So I felt really good about going out when I was comfortable, and I'm completely fully independent at home, work, or travel. Another thing that it helped me with is having prosthetics that were comfortable, allowed me to do all my ADLs. One thing that was super hard at the very beginning of my amputation was having two little girls and my wife having to take care of a 21-month-old, a 3-month-old, and myself. And even though I didn't have the best fitting in the world, I still wore prosthetics as much as I can because I seen the stress that it had on my wife. So it made it a lot easier after I was fitted correctly. And now when we go on vacations, or if me and my wife want to have a date night or whatever, it's not, hey, can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? It's just like it was before my amputation. I'm able to take care of all my family, all my kids. I can take my kids where I want by myself. I get to play with them and do the things I want. I can get back to work. And again, I can wear these prosthetics for 16 hours or more if I want to. You're on mute.
I knew I was going to do that. I muted myself and then I was like, man, I'm going to. All right. Well, thank you very much, Jason, for your perspective. And I think that's really important. And I'm going to kind of flip this coin here and talk from my end of the experience, I guess you could say. And I like the sign because I think there really are some specific off ramps, on ramps that lead to success or lead to failure. And for Jason in particular, it was really important for us to consider, like when he first came to us, we needed to look at his design of what he had and make sure that what he had was going to be wearable, comfortable, all that good stuff. But we also needed to evaluate his components. We needed to make sure that he had components that were going to be robust for his lifestyle. So we spent some time just kind of describing and talking about all the different options that are out there, and like, okay, so do you need these hand systems, or do you need a body powered hook, or do you need an ETD, all that kind of stuff. So that was really important. But the first point for Jason was, and I think this is very true for every patient out there, lower limb, upper limb, is that I have a firm belief that we should all be looking at the anatomy, right? And so what's interesting about that is that there are tons of published articles out there. There's a lot of recipes. There's really not the KFC behind the vault recipe that we can't get to, meaning there are published articles that talk about the exact same socket design that we designed for Jason. It's a published article that any prosthetist out there can look up, follow that step-by-step process. John McGillis, Chris Lake, Dan Conyers, they wrote this back before I even started with this company. And so my point is, if you feel as though your prosthesis isn't comfortable, there are different ways to approach the problem of the socket design. I would say that experience helps, because I always tell people that we just make more mistakes faster. We're going to make mistakes as prosthetists. We're going to try things. Trial and error is a vital component of getting you to a comfortable fit. Length of limb and the condition of your limb is obviously going to play a part, or a huge part, in how we approach the type of socket that we design. And there are varied techniques depending on how long or how short your residual limb is. And then, but I can say that all levels can benefit from a design consideration. I found this on the internet, this picture, and it's funny because it's really not far off in the sense that I have seen patients come in with direct laminated sockets, and maybe there's a point to why that particular socket was designed that way, but I personally can't understand that, to be honest. I feel like there are enough flexible materials in the form of a flexible thermoplastic as well as silicone that's available to us, that we should probably leave the hard stuff in the past, back in the time when we were whittling wood, literally, to make socket designs. So I feel like that's something that should be a bit of a no-brainer at this point. And then socket and frame concepts, that just really just means that the two pieces are separated from each other. So the frame is on the outside and the socket's what's against your skin. To me, I feel like when we consider the design for each individual and then we don't push people into kind of a bucket concept of like, well, one size fits many type of feel, that it really does improve functionality for the patient. And then ultimately comfort plus function equals using a prosthesis for as long as you feel like you need to use it. I would also argue that what's against your skin is a critical component to the prosthesis. Silicone, for instance, it's not necessary for every single person, but if the skin is scarred or it's burned or there's a lot of skin grafting or something like that, then I think it's pretty important. And it is available and it's out there and it's accessible. A lot of lower limb situations have silicone already integrated into the prosthetic design because you have a roll-on silicone liner or some type of a liner that has cushion to it. But what we do know from published articles is that silicone against scar tissue over time equates to reduced scar. And so therapists have known this for 40 years and they've been putting silicone patches on scar tissue and then wrapping it with Coban. So why wouldn't we just incorporate that into the socket design that you're in for 12 hours a day? And so that's kind of where we launched into doing this. And we're not, of course, not the only company doing this. So this is becoming more and more prevalent across different prosthetic facilities. So these are Jason's silicone sockets. And one thing to note about this is you can see the lime green. That's actually room temperature vulcanized silicone, which is very soft. It's kind of the Dr. Scholl's portion, but you see those bumps. I mean, those are pretty aggressive bumps, right? And so if that was hard plastic, then I don't think Jason would tolerate those. Oops, there go my lights. I think what would happen is that he would get in there and he would not be comfortable. And so what I feel like silicone does for us is it really allows us to maximize and be aggressive on our suspension characteristics of the prosthesis while maintaining comfort. And so also skin integrity, enhanced comfort, increased range of motion, scar management, all those things I feel like are really critical. And again, not every single case needs to be silicone, but if we kind of have to talk ourselves out of it, honestly. And that's for really any level. So it could be partial hand, it could be below, above, shoulder disarticulation, and even lower limb. So frame design, basically what we're talking about there is what's going on the outside of the socket. And we have to be cognizant of, well, we certainly have to be cognizant, like for Jason's situation for bilateral cases, but we want to make sure the alignment is appropriate. And so by aligning the wrist in ways that maximize, like for instance, Jason's ability to get to his mouth so he can feed himself or comb his hair or things like that. But in this picture, I think you can see that, you know, we're trying very desperately to minimize bulk, and we're not trying to add a huge big battery to the side of a prosthesis that looks awkward, if you want to call it. And then back here in the back of the prosthesis, we're cutting away a lot of the hard stuff, right? And so we're exposing the elbow on purpose, for comfort in terms of range of motion, but also, I mean, it's just less stuff around your skin. And so it's a little bit cooler that way. For Jason in particular, we wanted to make sure that he could get in and out of his prosthesis on his own. That's a big deal. And then we wanted to make sure that if we could, remove the hard stuff. Jason kind of alluded to the idea of a fast fitting. And it's funny, I found this picture online, and basically in Texas, we have highways that you can drive 85 legally. Everybody drives 85 all the time, but this is like, you won't get a ticket for it and it's always out in West Texas because it's open road. But we do actually believe in this concept of a fast fitting. And I'm always surprised to hear how long sometimes it takes to get into a prosthesis. And I think that's an easy conversion for a prosthetic facility. To say, you know what, it is important to get somebody into a prosthesis as quickly as possible. And there's some reasons behind that, because I feel as though it optimizes the fit and function I feel like it increases a patient's engagement into the device. So you're not getting cast and then coming back 2 weeks later and getting fit with a socket and then coming back 2 weeks later and then finally getting your initial prosthesis. All of this is happening within like 4 hours. And really, the initial prosthesis should be fit within a 24-hour period. And so
I mentioned something.
What's that?
I want to mention one thing too, why you said that. So one thing that I was really impressed with whenever I came to see you was as you were fixing what might have hurt in certain spots, I did have an OT in the room. So there was no dead time. There was no slow time. And that was really important because I didn't want being so far away. I didn't want to, and previously that's how it was. You handed off your arm and you sat there for an hour or however long it took to tweak this and tweak that. So it was really, really fast on the week. The time that I spent with you was amazing. And I think people need to know that as well.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jason. I would say that the vast majority of people that come into this facility, and I would say if someone were to adopt this outside of these four walls, working with a local therapist that can see you while your prosthesis is being built in the lab at the prosthetic facility, I think that's also a way to do this. And so that, again, to your point, that there's not a lot of downtime, and that in real time, because sometimes we build a prosthesis and we don't know what needs to be fixed until you use it. And so to be able to use it with the therapist, and the therapist can communicate back, hey, this is what I'm seeing is problematic, as in like the wrist is angled funny, or it's too long, it's too short. And then we make those changes quickly. That to me is going to build confidence. It's also going to provide better patient outcomes. So we try to stick to this. It doesn't always happen, but when patients are traveling, I mean, we're kind of compressed anyway. And so to that point, it is a kind of a scary concept. And Jason, I'm glad you kind of brought that up. Like, hey, like, I don't necessarily know that I want to travel too far away from my bed in my own home to get care that I need. But if I knew that like there was a specialist that particularly does this one thing, yeah, I think I would go. I always tell people in Dallas, why would I travel to Houston for care? Well, MD Anderson is an amazing cancer center, and they just have access to some things that maybe local hospitals here in town don't. And so I might consider that. I might consider going down to Houston for that treatment because it's really important, obviously. I can say that I feel like it's manageable. Jason, you're a great example of someone that can get on a plane and get here on your own. Not everybody can, but with certain support systems, I think it is manageable and it can be manageable. And then ultimately, it just might be what's needed in order to provide the best outcome for her. So I don't ever want that to be like a scary thing for people. If it's important, it's important. So, all right, Jason, I'm going to throw it back to you.
Okay. So I want to conclude with and in a few minutes, I hope that we have some question and answers. And if we don't, I'm going to do some question and answers with Rob so that you can understand a little bit more. But a patient's needs, first is you got to listen, and then listen again. It is very important to explain, especially if something hurts. You just got to tell them, and you got to say, this is what I want. And second thing is don't rush. I mean, this is something that I have to live with the rest of my life. I don't want somebody throwing something on me, say, all right, you got to get out the door because I got to get paid and see you later. You cannot rush us. And then you also consider the anatomy of my arm. My arm's different than others. Always being available. That is very, very important. If something tears up, there's been times that I've had issues with my skin that I've called and asked Rob about. And every single time I've called, he's always gotten back with me and explained to me what he felt, what he thought. And the other thing is never let anybody say you will get used to it. That happened to me. I was even told that once you get a callus, then it won't hurt anymore. And I remember when I was told that I don't want to wear it long enough to get a callus. Like, it hurts and I don't want it to hurt, but prior to being where I am today, I just assumed that anytime you put a foreign object on your body that's hard material or something that's not supposed to be on your arm, it's not going to be comfortable. I mean, that was my mentality, and that's kind of just what I thought. And I am very, very blessed that I had the opportunity to do my own research and figure out that that there is something better out there. And, you know, I get questions all the time. I get amputees call me from all over the world, and they want to know who makes your arms, who makes your arms. And the first thing I tell them is, look, you got to figure this out on your own. I will tell you who I go to and why I go there, but I tell everybody that you should treat this like a marriage. Go talk to 3 other companies and ask all 3 of them the exact same thing and get their response. And then pick the one that you think is best for you, because it is like a marriage. It is somebody that you have to be married to the rest of your life, and it's too expensive to get divorced. So you want to be happy the first time. So luckily, my divorce wasn't too awful bad, and I am where I am now.
So from my perspective, you know, I think we pose this to each other, and I think a prosthetist, you know, from a prosthetist needs, it is a two-way street. I think open communication is a big deal. And what that means is basically, look, if it's not right, you gotta let me know. You gotta let me know that it's not comfortable, or it's not fitting, or it's not suspending well, it's not working correctly, those kinds of things. To be available means, I always find that patient success is driven by their motivation, meaning if a patient's hard to get into the office, but then complains that their device isn't working quite right, then I feel like there's a bit of a mismatch there. Yeah, because you know, I want these devices. Like I hate it when patients walk in and their prosthesis looks perfectly brand new, because I know you're not wearing it, right? I know that it's something that, but a lot of times I find that patients don't want to hurt my feelings, or they just don't want to say anything. And so they're just like, no, I'm good, I'm fine, it's okay. Don't, you know, we'll maybe just a little adjustment here or there. So it is a collaborative effect, right? It's not something where we're just going to tell you what you're going to get and what you're going to need and how this is how it is. You know, you as the patient need to have input into the relationship. Please be patient with me, is something I would say, especially if I'm trying a new socket design or trying to figure something out. It's not always going to hit the bullseye every single time right away. So sometimes that means being open to new ideas and trying, okay, what if we were to cut this away? Or what if we were to cover this up, you know, and give you a little bit more support? You know, if we're willing to kind of work with you, be willing to work with us, kind of thing. And then of course that open communication is so critical. The president of our company said this, and I really believe it's a very important statement. Just basically that with the right design and material application, a prosthesis can and should be comfortable and something a patient should want to wear to improve their quality of life. And I feel like that's very important. So Jason, I'm going to leave it to you for some final thoughts, and then I know it's early and everybody's busy, and so maybe we'll open it up to question and answer. And I've got the chat room open, so I can certainly, if you want, you know, write your question into the chat, and I'll try to address it. Or if it's for Jason, I'll let Jason know. So, but Jason, take it away.
So my final thoughts. You know, I've been wanting to do something with the Amputee Coalition and explain my side of the story of being comfortable, successful. And I feel like for the last 10 years, my story has grown and grown with other upper limb amputees especially. And I feel like the same question gets brought up that this isn't right, it doesn't feel right, I don't like wearing mine, it falls off. I just had this conversation this past weekend. Actually, I was in Tennessee. My son was at a travel ball game, and this older gentleman, he was 69 years old. He walked up to me. He had a long sleeve shirt on, and at first I didn't even notice it, but because he had his hook in his pocket, and he said, "Is your name Jason Koger?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "You probably don't know me." And he introduced himself, but he said, "About 3 years ago, I got hurt." And he said, "As I was laying in the hospital, I got onto the computer and I found your story and I watched some of your videos, and man, it blew me away. And I reached out to you and you immediately called me back." And he said, "You have no idea how much I appreciate that." And I said, "Man, that's awesome." And so anyway, he gets to looking at my arms. I had my myoelectrics on at the time. And he said, "Can you get stuff out of your pocket?" And he was asking me, several different things. And I said, "Absolutely." And as we talked, we didn't even talk about my prosthesis or his prosthesis. He knew just by seeing how I carry myself that I'm comfortable. And he told me right then, he said, I want what you got. And I even thought about that the other day, that, every time I talk to somebody, it's always, I want what you got. I want to be as successful as you are. And several years ago, I made my mind up that I want, actually laying in the hospital, I told my wife that I wanted to be the best prosthetic user in the world. And I will never be at that, because I always want to strive for more and be able to do more. But I also told myself that if I could help somebody else be better than me, why wouldn't I do that? I think it's important, especially upper limb. There's such a small community and we need each other. I don't care if you've lost 4 fingers, 5 fingers, don't feel bad trying to reach out to a guy that lost 2 hands. You still lost something that is very important for everyday living. So I was very excited to do this talk once they told me that I could. And then that's when I wanted to talk to my prosthetist, Rob, and get him involved, because I can only tell somebody the way I feel, but not the way that my arms are made. So I thought it would be really interesting to get his side of the story with mine and what I expect. And, there's so many things I could just go over and over with. I know earlier I mentioned a doctor is a doctor. And I always thought that at the very beginning, a doctor goes to med school and they are a doctor. But would you let a knee doctor work on your heart? Or would you let your heart doctor work on your knee? They're specialized. And I always wondered, why is this not specialized? Another thing that's really important in my mind is, and it is sad that our community of upper limb patients is so small, that if you do have a prosthetist that only gets to do 1 or 2 a year, or 1 or 2 every 5 years, they're not going to be as good as somebody that is going to do 1 every day or multiple a day. So that all that's huge considerations for me and upper limb and the size of the community that we live in. So I want to stress that I am here for anybody to explain to them. Another thing that I want to share too, that I feel like is really important, is when I first got hurt and I was fitted prior to Rob, I had another amputee come up to me and say, "Man, that strap's too long. This is wrong. This is wrong. Why do you have that kind of hook? Why do you have this? Why don't you have this?" And I literally went back to my prosthetist and told him, I said, "Man, they told me my strap's wrong and this is wrong, and we need to change it." And I went completely backwards. And I learned right then that guy that told me that stuff was not a prosthetist. And I'm not a prosthetist. So I will never tell anybody the way they should be. The reason my stuff, I have a single ring on my body part. Rob and I just talked about this. Some people like figure eights. I will tell somebody why I have a single ring and why it works good for me. That does not mean it's going to work good for you. I wear the I-limb hand. The I-limb hand may not work for you. I'm not going to tell you, you have to have the I-limb hand or an ETD or a body part to live, because I don't know what your goals are. That is a marriage discussion, just like I talked about a minute ago. That is a discussion between the user's family, and the prosthetist. So never let another amputee tell you how you're fitted, right or wrong. You know what you feel like. So, and I don't know if you want to add to that, Rob, but
No, that's really good advice, Jason. And yeah, I think it's true. What works for one may not work for another, type of thing. And we just have to take each individual case for what it is. It's a unique and different situation, and it may be the exact same level, but there might be outside factors that are playing into a decision. So yeah, and I think that I think you brought up the relationship aspect. You know, that's one of the reasons why I love my job so much, is because it's rare that a patient is quote unquote a patient. Most of my patients are what I would consider friends or colleagues, in a way. Like, this is a collaborative effort, right? And so I feel like that's an important situation. No one should ever feel like a number, or just kind of you're there and you're, you know, it should be more than that in this particular field of medicine. We have that opportunity. My wife is a GI PA, so she sees like 30 patients during clinic, and it's a lot of people, right? So I don't think prosthetists are typically that busy. So you should have the ability to develop that relationship with your prosthetist. But so I think with that said, what we can do is, again, I have the chat room open here, and what we can do is just take an opportunity to see if anybody wants to type in a message, and I can read it aloud, and we can answer. But Jason, you had mentioned that you had some questions that you wanted to throw out there while others are kind of typing stuff in, and so why don't you kind of get the question and answer session going, and then we'll do that until we can, until no one else has a question.
So, you know, the first question, and I'm going to go back to something that you said earlier about a patient being, I can't remember exactly how you said it now, but being helpful for you or to you, and, you know, having a mindset that we can try something else if something that I have is not working. And, you know, I really, really appreciate you doing that, because, and I don't know if this is a question or I'm just going to just tell you a final thought again, I guess, but I think that's really important, because I remember sitting down with you before multiple times and you explaining how you were going to build my arm. And, you know, I have a mechanical engineering background. So in my mind, I was like, that's not going to work. Why? And not that I was arguing it at all, but I wanted to be, why do you think this is going to work better? And then I would give my side of what I think. And then together, I think that helps a patient. I think it helps a prosthetist and a patient kind of come to terms together on what will work for that particular person.
Yeah, I think, believe me, I've made, I can't even count the number of mistakes and things that we've had to go back and, you know, start over. In Texas, we have this country western dance called the Texas two-step, and it's probably called the same dance as called other things elsewhere. But basically the gist is, and I say this to patients all the time, you take 2 steps forward and then you take 1 step back. But the cool thing is, you go around the dance floor, you keep going, you keep moving forward. But sometimes that does take that 1 step back, reset, maybe recast, try a different socket. You know, there are times when I'll take an impression of somebody's arm and I pushed in the wrong spot and I didn't realize it. And then when we go through the test socket fitting, man, it is not good. It's, you know, it is important to say, you know what, it's time to scrap this and we're gonna try again. And so I have to have, believe me, there's some times when, you know, pride gets in the way of that. I'm gonna make this work kind of flavor. And there's some times when it's just like, I gotta let that go and kind of start over and be comfortable with doing that. I don't want to do that all the time. You know, I would love to feel like we're making progress. Because then I think sometimes you get into this vicious cycle of like, it's like a merry-go-round, and you're, you know, it's like, it's not perfect, so you recast and you retry, and it's not perfect, and, you know, it's kind of back and forth.
So I do have a question for you. Can you explain what a test socket is and why? Actually, I got 2 questions for you. What
Okay.
is a test socket? Because some people in here may not know what a test socket is or what the purpose of a test socket is. And the reason I asked that question is because I actually had a brand new amputee ask me last week, will I be able to take this test socket home? And I said, maybe, but it's probably going to break because it's not really intended to wear for a long period of time. So I'll let you answer that one, I guess, first.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, a test socket, check socket, it's to check the fit of the prosthesis, and it's usually in a clear plastic that is not as durable as you mentioned. There are other clear plastics that are pretty durable, and some for lower limb, it's weight bearing is a bit of a safety concern possibly, and so there are ways to create a clear socket design and let somebody walk in parallel bars or something like that. But with upper limb, we can design something that you could take with you and use for an extended period of time, because sometimes, I mean, you put it on, you use it around the office. I like to call our office the magic office because everything fits and feels great. And it's not until you get home that the wrist literally comes out of your arm, or all of a sudden that inside bone on your elbow starts really getting pressure, and it's like, uh-oh. So it does sometimes take some time to get. So we like to call those devices initial prosthetic devices or diagnostic prosthetic devices, so that we still keep them clear, so we can see through the plastic to your skin to see if it's too loose, too tight, that kind of thing. But I think the process should be, you shouldn't be cast and then immediately given a definitive prosthesis or a finished device. There should be that interim where you have something to actually, the prosthetist has something to just make sure that we're on the right track.
So second question is, I get this a lot too. What is a realistic expectation of time from the time of your injury? And I know everybody's a little different between burns and scars, but from the time of your injury, when you should try to start reaching out to a prosthetist to talk to them, and then from that moment on, how long will it be before I get a test socket to a regular socket, and then even further of how long will it take before I start getting my life back the way I want it?
Wow, those are big questions, Jason. And it's probably it varies per case and per person and per situation, right? I would say this. I think from a when should I start investigating a prosthetic facility or interviewing different prosthetists, things like that? I think as soon as possible. I think even in a lot of our patients, their families will reach out to us before the patient's even out of the hospital. So, and the main reason is a lot of insurance companies, it takes time to get an approval to move forward with a prosthesis. So I always say, like, don't wait until your arm's completely healed and completely shrunk down and the pain is reduced. I mean, you can be doing all those things in therapy while you're trying to get the prosthesis approved. And so my perspective is you want to try to get that ball pushed down the hill as soon as you can. In terms of fitting, I have a strong belief that as soon as your sutures are out, then you're pretty much ready to start compression therapy with the doctor's direction. So I think that's something we want to try to get an arm or a leg shrunk down as quickly as possible. In terms of getting into a initial prosthesis versus a definitive and things like that then does start playing into the prosthetic facility that you're at. A lot of it depends on healing. Some of it depends on insurance and when they decide to approve or deny, and then the appeals process and all that stuff. So there's just so many factors that go into it. I would say a general rule of thumb is as soon as you're healed, you could probably start with a prosthesis as long as the doctors are okay with it. And there's the insurance has approved it. I mean, if in a perfect world we could just go ahead and get somebody fit, I would say that we could do that as soon as the wound heals to a point where it's not weeping. And there's, I'm not a big blood and guts guy, so as long as the blood and guts are within the body, then it's good. Yeah, so I mean, but if, and again, in a perfect world, if we could cast somebody, do an initial socket and frame and a prep prosthesis by Tuesday and Wednesday, and a definitive prosthesis designed and built and delivered by Friday, that's kind of the sweet spot. And then a patient goes off and you start using the prosthesis in the community, at home, at work, and then you come back to us with okay, these are the challenges that we need to address. I think, to me, that's the best way to approach it.
Awesome. I don't know if you have a question for me, or if there's any questions out there. Is there any questions out there? Have you seen any?
Nope, I haven't. People are quiet, so it's just you and me talking at this point, but that's okay. The cool thing is,
question,
okay.
which I know the answer to it, but if I was a brand new amputee and I came to you, is there a way for you to give me resources to talk to other amputees? I'm sure there is some, and some that may not want their name disclosed, but can you introduce me to people like me to talk to?
Yeah, so of course the Amputee Coalition is a huge resource for me as a prosthetist, but for you as a patient. So that's my first step, would be to contact them. And then they have peer support networks. We, in our particular situation, in our company, we do also have peer support networks. Other companies around the United States, I think pretty much that's kind of a standard of most practices, is that you have kind of a list of people that are willing. And I always say to patients, and I know we only have about 3 minutes left, but you really quickly go from the mentee to the mentor, meaning, like, it doesn't take long before you've now walked ahead of somebody else. And the sad thing is, right now, someone is getting hurt, someone's getting injured, and probably tomorrow I'm going to be calling you, Jason, to talk to somebody, because and I'm sure that Amputee Coalition has that all the time. So yes, so the answer is yes. There's peer support. You don't have to feel like you're on an island in the middle of the ocean. So
perfect. So I know we got like, what, 2 or 3 minutes. I just want to finish up by saying thank you, Rob, for being on this with me and getting through this whole presentation. But I also want to tell, whether it's amputees or OTs or prosthetists, that you can Google upper limb amputees, and my story would probably pop up on some, or you could type in my name. We do videos on YouTube of how we do certain things. I know other amputees do the same, so I think it's easy to get resources out there. So thank you again for doing this with me, and the Amputee Coalition for allowing us to put this on.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. It's been a fun experience, and yeah, we'll go ahead and sign off and let everybody have a great rest of their day.
Thank you.
Okay.